Welcome back to another episode of Water Break. We're extremely excited to have our first in-person guest on YouTube. And T's going to do a little intro for us and tell us who we got on the show today.
Yeah, so we got our first guest here in the flesh. We have the COO of RotoWire Sports, and we got Tim Schuler joining us, longtime Bills fan and longtime sports fan. So we're excited. Welcome, Tim.
Yep.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here, guys. They don't let the COO out of the cage too often, so I appreciate any platform I can get, so thank you.
No, we're excited. We're pumped to have you on, and we're talking some of the stuff a little unique that we've never talked about is fantasy football. And we know you are the expert, the guru. Is that what they call you, Tim? So
that is what my company definitely is. Some would say that have played against me. Maybe I'm personally not, but our company definitely is the leading platform
so
for that.
The company is, but what about you? When you are in fantasy football leagues, do you do pretty well?
I do pretty well. It's not because I'm smarter than anybody else, but I'm willing to, out of a point of pride, I'm willing to put the work in, and I probably put more elbow grease in than the average player. But my track record is probably not the best, but it's okay.
I like that.
It's better than me. I've been struggling this year, mainly getting guys who are getting injured.
Just blame it on injuries. That's the.
And I have a few Cowboys on my team, so that doesn't help either.
You know, I've never really been huge into fantasy football, but there was a buddy that me and T knew that started this league, and so we were in it for a couple of years together, 2 or 3 years.
I know this.
And he knows exactly what story I'm telling. I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
And this guy needed a quarterback, and so I had Deshaun Watson at the time, and this was his kind of breakout year.
His rookie year,
His
yeah.
rookie year, he was just doing unbelievable. And so T was like, "Hey, let me trade for Deshaun Watson." I was like, I don't know, whatever. Give me, and then I was like, you know what? Give me Todd Gurley because he had Todd Gurley. He's like, all right. So we traded straight up. Literally that week, I gave him Deshaun Watson. He had a season-ending injury, and he was the number one team, and I ended up winning the whole season.
Literally just plummeted. So,
yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, that was our rough fantasy experience.
It wasn't rough for me. I ended up
you won the league.
I won the league.
You won the league.
I was
Rough
okay.
for one of you.
I get the bad pick.
But it was great. Well, we're ready to jump in here, and Dalen's going to be shooting us some questions and kind of get to know you a little bit before we get into the science of fantasy football.
All right.
All right, let's get started. All right, Tim, what sports were you into growing up?
I'd say a little of everything, but I'm from Buffalo, which is strictly a football and a hockey town, and then a little of everything else. So between those two, as early as I can remember, when you're 4 years old, 5 years old, there you're watching sports with your dad and your uncles and stuff. So it's ingrained. You usually get kicked out of something if you're not into those two things when you're little.
So with the Bills, were you were Jim Kelly era, or were you later?
I'm a little older than that.
Older than Jim Kelly?
I was,
okay.
College, I was definitely a Jim Kelly, but this if anyone's as old as me, they will allow. I was a Joe Ferguson, Jerry Butler, and believe it or not, I can remember barely O.J. Simpson when he was playing for the Bills.
Really?
Right on.
He went on to other things. I do remember him as a great football player. So, yes.
He went on to other things. I like
Other
how
things.
how you did that. That was a very smooth
different
transition.
career path.
Now, you mentioned hockey. Was it a love for watching, being a fan of hockey, or did you play it as well?
Played it too. We actually had an ice rink in our backyard, so learned to skate when I was, probably right after I learned how to walk. So between that and then watching what the pros did on TV, that was the way you got to stay up late. When you were little in our neighborhood, if you could, bond with your dad or bond with your mom and I want to watch the Bills or, on a primetime game or the Sabres, well, you get to stay up late. You can do so that was a easy means to enjoying sports for sure.
Yeah. So as a kid, that was a good segue into it, to loving sports. I get to stay up a few extra hours here.
Yes,
I like that.
You got to do things and eat well when you were watching sports with your parents.
Did you get to go to a lot of Bills? Were you a part of Bills Mafia? Were you at the games a lot?
A little bit. I will say that in Buffalo, Sabres games are very clean, very family oriented. You would take your son in a year or two to those games. The Bills games back then tended to be a little. You would not bring a 6-year-old to those games. Even when first game I ever went to, I was 9. I remember bad cheers, bad things being said, and I had to ask my dad a lot of questions about what that man's doing and why is that guy hitting that guy and stuff like that.
Your dad was like, I think we're just going to watch this on TV.
We're going to do TV until you're about 12 or 13.
Right.
What was the coldest game that you remember going to?
I went to the AFC Championship game when the Bills played the LA Raiders at the time, and the Bills were dry for many, many, many years. So good question. So you had to must see the game, and
Right.
and I was early in college. No one had any money, and whatever I paid, it was probably $50. But that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we have to go to this game. And me and my friend were the only ones in our group who even had the $50 to go. So we met someone like outside a hotel, bought tickets to the AFC Championship game. And that game, I will never forget how freezing cold we were. It was negative 14.
Oh, my
Wind chill
goodness.
was like whatever, but they won 51-3, so that
Hey, there we
warmed
go.
warmed things up pretty well.
That was a lot
That's
of
a
cheering,
plus.
so it was keeping
Wow.
the blood
It kept,
flowing.
and once you got out of that stadium, you were like, "This is gonna hurt for a few hours."
Right.
What was harder to watch as a Bills fan? Was it last year's wild card game where it felt like both teams were trying to lose the game,
Well, that was just a jab right there.
Ouch.
Thanks for being our guest today.
or
Shots.
or was it the missed field goals in the
Super Bowl one
in the
last
Super
year.
Bowl?
I told someone last year that was probably the second or third worst one. The worst one was the Super Bowl because you thought you had it. They drove the ball down, and you saw him line up, and you said, this guy hasn't missed barely a kick all year. It was just within his range. He was known for not having a lot of distance, but he was super accurate. And you're like, there we go. This is our first of many Super Bowls, and that didn't happen. So that's number one. Number two, if folks are old enough to remember, the Bills played the Oilers. It was the Titans. They had switched to the
Yeah.
Titans, and they threw that across the field lateral.
Oh, the Music City Miracle. Yeah.
Wycheck to Dyson, and he ran up the field, and that was that.
Did you think it was a backwards pass?
Yes, yeah.
Of course. Come on,
Completely,
T.
at least 5 or 7 yards backwards. That was number two. That was my first year I moved out here, so I was telling all my new friends how the Bills were going to win the Super Bowl, and that was number three last year. That was
Oh man.
well, we were up 16-0,
Yeah.
and to see that unraveled, and a young quarterback all went haywire. That was a tough go of it.
But the Bills look good this year. They were on last season. They were my sleeper pick to win the Super Bowl this year. So
They are looking good.
I'm silently rooting for the Bills.
I'd probably go Chiefs, Seahawks-ish, and then you get down to more of the Bills and the Steelers and
yeah.
Titans maybe.
We're not going to be taking jabs the whole episode, though, just in case you were
That
wondering.
one hurt. That one, you mentioned the cold, but that one actually I could get.
Question number 3 of the episode. What was the worst sports memory ever?
What's next? What's the worst moment of your life?
Yeah, we won't go that.
What girl-
We won't get personal.
What girl broke your heart the worst? Here we go.
That's funny. Well, Tim, we know your background now, but growing up, did you often watch sports from an analytical point of view or for just entertainment?
I was the geek, no doubt about it. I had at age 5 or 6. I was watching games with my dad. I'm sure they had, drinks and pizza, and I had a notebook scribbling down, what was going on, and I was the stats nerd very early. So
Did you do the same for baseball games with like how they would have they're tracking like every inning, that hits and all that?
I used to spend 3.5 hours keeping stats that were in the paper the next day, just because it was that was my mindset to do this.
That's pretty cool,
to
though.
write stuff
Next
down.
morning, got the newspaper out with the highlighter, checking all the leaders
I
and
got
stuff
that
like that.
Yes.
Missed that.
I did. I took the leaders. A lot of stuff was in newspaper a long time ago, and I would underline. Oh, there's a Buffalo, Bill, or there's a New York Yankee, or something like that. I would underline the guys that I wanted to be at the top.
So it's been like that since day one.
Yes. It's a good thing to be and a bad thing to be all at the same time. That's for sure.
Are you for baseball? Are you Yankees or Mets?
Most folks in my area grew up a Yankees fan, so
Yankees.
it doesn't make me too popular out on the West Coast. So Yankees, it's a pretty big. You'd consider that the local team in a lot of smaller cities.
Yankees
Okay.
Yankees this year, they're gonna have to pay some big dollars. They got some guys coming up with some big contracts. So
Even for the Yanks, it's
Yeah.
gonna be big to
Yeah.
keep those guys.
but they're
around.
not afraid to spend it.
No.
Neither are the Dodgers. So those two teams are not afraid to go into the
They're the
to
heavyweights.
spending there, and Yeah, get those deep pockets.
Who are some of your favorite players to watch growing up?
Jim Kelly was one as I was a little bit older. I mean, everyone was a hero back then, so I'll even say OJ was a legend in Buffalo. If you saw OJ at the grocery store, you were a hero just seeing that. You're like, wow, you saw him there, you did that, you know. So a few guys like that. The Sabres had a guy, Gilbert Perreault, who was incredible. Buffalo had a basketball team, an NBA team, so there was Bob McAdoo, who later played for the Lakers. On a national level, you grew up, it was, you know, even pre-Jordan, so it was like Larry Bird, Muhammad Ali in boxing, you know, anyone who was just great and bigger, you know what I mean? Bigger, had that big, you know, presence and, you know, just persona about him. That's who everyone gravitated towards.
Like Buffalo had a lot of, you know, the football team had a lot of good running backs kind of go through. I guess who was more like, what were you more disappointed by?
Where is this going
I thought it came to my head. Were you more disappointed by like Marshawn Lynch going to Seattle or like CJ Spiller not becoming as big of a...
Probably Spiller, because you thought when Lynch left, it's like, okay, they picked the fast, exciting guy, the joystick player, and this is going to work out great. And he had that one incredible season, and then it just he just went away, like we know happens with running backs, and you're like, where'd this go? And then they kind of slipped, and that hurt when he didn't pan out like that. It's crazy to think him and Lynch were in the same, and then this, you know, Fred Jackson, remember him? They were all in the same team at one point. But that was
they had a good running game, and then, you know, later LaShawn McCoy coming in later, so a lot of good running backs.
Thurman Thomas
back.
Well, when it's cold and you can't throw the ball and you don't have Josh Allen, you know, you're throwing through a hurricane every game. You need a good running game to back it up. Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, who are your top 5 fantasy players this year, would you say?
So this year, if we take
notes, people.
Yeah. We take guys like Michael Thomas, who probably were on the top 5, but they're hurt. That's just not going to pan out. Saquon Barkley would have been on that list. He's hurt for the year. So if I'm just saying today, I'll start today. You would take still McCaffrey, because he's coming back probably next week, not this week. He's definitely, you know, the top guy. You would take second is Kamara from the Saints. He's certainly, you know, the do-it-all running back that we were, you know, discussing earlier. Derrick Henry from a pure, just going to put up big numbers every week and score touchdowns. So those are my 3 running backs. You definitely,
solid.
If you had any top 5, you'd take that. And then the NFL is such a receiving game now. I'd probably go Hopkins for the Cardinals, just because their offense is berserk. They run, you know, many more plays, many more passing stuff than anyone else, and he's head over heels as just a player, and you know, that can put up, you know, eye-popping numbers. He's pretty consistent too. He usually catches 6-7 passes a game. And then my kind of off the board one is Metcalf for the Seahawks.
He's
I just think
something else.
Get ahead of the curve, because he is bigger than everybody else. You saw what he did on that game yesterday. He's faster than everybody else, and he has probably the second best quarterback in the whole league throwing the ball. So that's we'll have a great rest of the season, and if you're in some league that's a keeper league, he's the guy. He's the guy you want to have.
Yeah.
So those 5, it's probably, you could make a very good case for a lot of other guys, but those are my 5 right now as we sit here.
I have none of them on my team. So
Me neither.
That's probably why you're losing.
I was like, man. And now I know who to trade for. I'm going to trade on my whole team.
But most would say right now Kamara and Derrick Henry, just because they're not hurt, and they're putting numbers week after week that are great.
Yeah.
There's always that guy in the fantasy league who has like the first or second pick and gets like overly excited and picks a quarterback, like early on. You know, I think you and I were in that league. I don't remember who it was. One of our buddies picked up a quarterback super early, and in the back of my mind, it's just, I mean, if you want to talk to this a minute for those that love fantasy. I feel like there are so many quarterbacks that put up so many big numbers, and it's a waste. I mean, would you agree to that statement?
It's so true, because if you ask me that question, who are the best players in football, I'm going to say Mahomes. I'm going to say Russell. Those are the best players in football. They're the most exciting to watch. They are great. We'll remember them for 20 or 30 years. But in fantasy, that's a great question. that's not what you're going for. I can get, from Mahomes, not the same, but I can come at least close to that with Herbert from the Chargers, or guys are running all over the place at quarterback, putting up really, really good numbers. So
Yeah.
I've done it in many leagues myself. I fall into that trap. This year I did it. I said Lamar Jackson, most exciting player in football, was the MVP last year. I took him way too early, and just the way you build your team by doing that. Now I'm chasing running backs. Now I'm chasing receivers. I have none of the top guys at those spots. Because I have Lamar. He's not even up there with Mahomes. You just can't fall into that trap. So you're right. You don't want to take a quarterback that earlier. It just
I was gonna say, especially this year, from what I've seen in the leagues that I've been in, is like second or third round, people were drafting Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, and then like towards the end, they had nobody else to go back because everyone else was taking all their running backs and receivers. But it was interesting to see that this year, especially from previous years, where the quarterbacks would always go the last 3 rounds, and now it's like 2 or 3, and it's like these guys are just putting up crazy numbers. But at the end of the day, too, like you're saying with Lamar, he's not even up there at the top, but you wasted your pick kind of in the third round with him. So it's just kind of interesting to see how the sport actually is being played now too.
Completely.
With
I did exactly what you said, and I looked at, now that we're 6 and 7 weeks in, I looked at who was winning. I'm in 5 leagues, which is probably too many to have a real life, but I looked at the top teams in those 5 leagues. None of them had Lamar Jackson or, guys like that, certainly not Saquon or Emmett or guys who have had tougher years, but they all had, either a Derrick Henry or a Kamara, and then they all had Russell Wilson or the guy who you thought of 5th or 6th on draft day, and then, okay, I got these 2 great players in front of him, and I got a quarterback who's putting up eye-popping numbers. Dak was on those teams, too, until he got hurt. Yeah. But you can get those guys at quarterback by way. Josh Allen's another one. He just puts up sick numbers every week because, again, they're running for touchdowns or throwing. And if you can get those, you're not going to get a Kamara at running back or a Hopkins at receiver in the 5th or 6th round. But if you wait on quarterback and you're patient, you can build a really good team.
Yeah. Already giving us some pointers for next year, T.
It's
too late.
Yeah, I didn't follow him to a T this year.
We're done now, yeah.
All right, Tim. Well, to close out this first segment, we like to do what we call start, bench, cut. And so I'm going to give you 3 current NFL players right now in the league. And you're going to start one, you're going to bench one, and you're going to cut one.
Okay.
You've mentioned all 3 already, so it'll be interesting to see what you go here. Here we go. Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson.
Wow, you just picked 3 really good quarterbacks that are all very similar. Start, bench, and sit for the rest of the year from here on.
Yep.
Let's just go with that.
Okay, I'd probably go Mahomes start. Just because I wouldn't say more proven than Russ, but he's done what you expected him to do, and he's got the whole rest of the season in front of him. And the Chiefs we've seen them. They're nuts.
Yeah.
They're dangerous.
They put up 40-some points in a snowstorm yesterday, like it was nothing. So
against who?
Don't remind me. Don't.
I think it was the Broncos. Sorry, Tim.
What was that team again?
I got him back.
What was that team again?
I got him
on my
back.
tongue.
Every time I hear the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes was just like, oh.
And we played him too, the Bills, and it was the same thing. And he didn't even have a great game, but he can just do things on the field, and he's the known entity. I think Russell, I would start bench. I would put him second because he's taken it to a new level this year in the weapons between Metcalf, Lockett we saw last night. But I think if we look at what we've seen, he's been playing probably a little bit above even him, possibly a Hall of Fame quarterback, but he's just kind of there. And Mahomes he's the best player in football. Yeah. He's doing what you expect him to do. Russ is a little bit, and they got to play the Niners, they got to play the Rams, they got to play the Cardinals again. So it's not that easy. I'd probably put him in the second tier. And as much as I hate to say it, because I have him and I picked him way too early, Lamar, it seems like folks have figured the Ravens out just a little. So he's great. He'll be awesome. I would probably say trade for him if someone's ready to dump him, but he's maybe one tier lower than those 2 other guys right now.
I did fall in the same trap as you. I took him with the 3rd pick this year. So
mistake.
You walk out of that draft, you're like, I got Lamar.
I got Lamar. I got a dual threat quarterback, and then the last few weeks he's put up the same numbers
15
as
points.
Yeah.
yeah, not that bad, but he's put up the same numbers as you said, Justin Herbert, or
Yeah.
even Joe Burrow's been putting up better.
You can
numbers,
get that elsewhere if you 112 passing yards is not good unless you get 100 rushing yards to go with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so as we get into this next segment on our show, we want to jump really and take a deep dive into RotoWire and into your company and how you guys started and all the ins and outs. So Dalen, go ahead and take us away. Jump into the first questions.
All right, Tim. So what is RotoWire?
So RotoWire, the easiest way to explain what we do, we are kind of the be all and end all. If you are a fantasy sports player, whether you're someone who just got into it because you have kids and you want to play and participate, to the most diehard, someone who's been playing for 20, 30 years, we cover it all. We cover player notes, we do articles, we do podcasts like this that are all about fantasy advice. We're on the radio. Anything you can think of to help manage your team, make your team better, have fun with it all. Just read the columns and say, this is fun, this is interesting. I'm going to go make that trade. I'm going to do this. This is a different way to play fantasy. I'm going to try that with my league.
Mm-hmm.
We don't run leagues. We don't do anything where you're a daily fantasy sports site. We're simply not the manager of what goes on in your league. We're more like the Associated Press. We just spit out as much quality and fun and interesting and higher level content as we can, and whatever you need. If you're in any kind of fantasy league, we have it somehow, and we try to make it as worthwhile, as enjoyable as we can.
Did you guys ever consider or try to dabble into maybe running a fantasy league, or you just kind of
do for baseball? So I forgot to mention, we still do baseball leagues. A long time ago we did. It is just a complete, it's branched off. These sites are so sophisticated. You go to an ESPN or Yahoo, which are very good. We just don't have the bandwidth to compete. You need servers like crazy, and we're a mid-sized journalistic oriented site, and those are major tech programs that can't break. They can't have anything, and they can accommodate 15,000 football or baseball leagues. So we dabble in it. We do kind of a higher level baseball league, which is still fun. We have programmers who run that, and we can put 500 to 1,000 leagues on that if we want to. But we're out of that business, and we're strictly a publisher these days.
How cool is it that, we're just talking about at the beginning of the episode your love for sports and kind of into the analytics of things and the stats and everything, and now it's transitioned into your full-time career being surrounded by that. That's such an awesome thing that sports has been that big of a part of your life.
It is, and even though I do a lot of other things, like I was telling you guys, I do HR, or I might do a lot of things that take to put a company together. It's always there. There's always a game on. I'm always, working with younger journalists who they have that same passion, and it's never away from you. And at the end of the day, the company's built around sports. So what happens, who advances, which teams are good, which players are hurt or not hurt. That's our entire essence. So yeah, it makes it enjoyable and fun.
Are you able to take us through, I guess, visually through the studio? Do you guys have like the 15 camera or TV screens set up, and like you're watching everything? How does it kind of look?
What T is wondering is, can we go?
Can we have a side job there? Well,
are you hiring?
we do have a real headquarters. We started out, basically just in a box of an office out here in LA, and it evolved into a headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, and we sit a real pretty good sized office right next to a university, and it has become like that. It's probably a little less glamorous than you think, but within the last decade we have TVs surrounding the room, and if you're an editor and you go in there and work the night shift, you basically have 5 or 6 games on. If it's NBA season, we have the whole package up, and
so cool.
You're doing that, so you'll see an injury happen, and again, if you're a journalist, you're thinking to yourself, I gotta what does that mean if someone for the Lakers got hurt? Who's going to take his place? What does that mean for this outcome? How bad might the injury be? You got to size it all up and go to work on it.
Does it? I guess how much does it go in? How much work does it take to just kind of? Are you sitting there watching for the next thing to happen, or you just kind of soaking it all in? Like, how does it kind of work just as an analyst or?
No, good question. It is. I don't envy them a lot. I envy them because they do get to work in sports all the time. And if you are a sport, I've never had one of our writers or editors say they dislike what they do, and they're willing to work crazy hours or do a lot of extra work just because they love it so much. But being an editor we have real wires, just like, again, the Associated Press, or if you worked at the Wall Street Journal or something like that. They're editors with very good backgrounds. They have very good journalism skills, and they know how to weigh news, what's more important and what's not important. And their job is very difficult because they have so much coming at them. If I worked yesterday on an NFL Sunday, you probably have 12 to 20 injuries at one time, and you got to, okay, what do I need to do first? Which is the most important? What does that mean? Where's my downtime? How do I, manage the lesser things I pushed back? And it's a difficult job, and I don't always have those skills, and I kind of envy, the way they size it up and put it all together.
And do they usually have like a deadline, like, hey, we need to put this out before this quarter ends, or things like
5 minutes ago? The fantasy consumer is get it out fast, get it out accurate. It cannot be a mistake. You would be surprised, again, the journalism principles that go into it, just because if you make a mistake and I say, this guy's the new starter, even take it to basketball or baseball, this guy's the new starter, he's the guy, and thousands of people hear that on the radio or on our website and go pick that person up, and it's a big mistake, and they blame us for everything. I lost my league because of you. I lost this week to my rival who I can't stand because of you guys. So we it's a lot of weight on our shoulders.
Take a lot of heat.
Recommend. Yes, we take the heat.
Sounds like a pretty stressful job to be an analyst, or kind of how you're saying with the journalists having to be right on everything they put out there, because if it's wrong, like you said, they're going to get blamed for everything. So.
It's a lot of news, so part of the job is a lot of straight news, and you're just working with facts and trying to be as accurate as you can, and that's one thing. And then we have another part of the company that's very advice driven, and there's a lot of pressure on that. It's fun, you get to size up players like we just did in the last segment, and it's fun to do that. But once you come to your conclusion, and there's a lot that goes into it, and you're putting it out there, and it's not just a few of us saying, well, I'll take that, and it's thousands of people that are hearing that and using it. And as much as I care about it and I want to win, there are people that care way more about how their fantasy team does than I do, and they get mad, they get happy, they get there's a lot riding on it for them.
That's crazy. Well, how did you get connected with the original Roto News trio of Peter, Jeff, and Herb?
So I'm going to date myself again, but I went to business school. I went through college, went to business school. I had a very normal financial job for a few years, and I'll date myself again, but this little thing called the internet popped up kind of in the late 90s, and I thought that was really cool, and we had used it in our job. No one back then really knew what it was or what was going to happen, and the three guys you mentioned, my partners, were entrepreneurial, they were visionaries, and they had already started a website doing similar things in fantasy leagues. So I emailed them, these, the three original founders, Peter, Jeff, and Herb, just ran. Email was even a crapshoot back then. And I emailed them, and had they not answered, even the email, things just didn't get sent back then or whatever. Had they not answered that, my life would be completely different. I wouldn't be sitting, be doing something completely
That's crazy.
different. But they answered the email, and they basically said, we don't know where this site is going. We just need help. What, you have a background? Can you write? And, I checked all the boxes, and it wasn't like I was a partner with them right away. I would sit there after my job. I was taking MBA classes. After all that, I'd go home at 10, 11 at night and write up these fantasy player notes on, and they assigned me 3 teams that, weren't even in Buffalo. And I had to cover these teams like the Ottawa Senators and hockey and, a little bit of the Celtics and stuff like that. And I would type up player notes, and it just, as mundane as that sound, as late as night as that was, I was this eureka moment. This is great. I want to do this the rest of my life. So later, to answer your question, I got to know those guys a lot more. They knew I went, I wasn't just some high school kid or something like that. So when they went through their buyout, they got bought out by a company out here in LA. I just threw it all away, threw everything in the truck, gave up my job, told them I was leaving, and said I'm gonna go do this internet thing in Los Angeles where I've never been to. I've never met these guys in person, and I'm just gonna do it. And moved away and moved across the country to get it started with them.
That's awesome.
So
Wow.
were you just like right out of, you were in college or you were finishing
In
business
college,
school?
went to
or-
grad school, finished business school, and literally the fall after I had finished business school, throughout that summer, I had worked the website was starting to get noticed and taken off, and I was doing a lot more than just, 1 or 2 player notes a day, and got a good rapport with those guys, and they told me we're about to go through a buyout. We need people out here, and just again, it was a pretty big leap of faith that it would work out. But I moved with them out here, and even then, they didn't have a straight full-time job for me. I had to work in sports with this buyout company, and still do Roto News on the side, and all that. And it just, one thing led to another, and we're still all together.
And you're here now.
Yep, the band's still together.
So is that when you joined the RotoWire team? Is when you like fully moved out to California?
When I came out here, so my 3 partners, who are my partners now, went through this whole buyout, and it was a 2-year process. And as smart as they are, and as great of a job as they did with the website, the buyout itself went terrible, and there was a lot of .com crashes back then, and they realized I was kind of the business guy through all that. So in 2001, we formed our own site, and it was just the 5 of us. 5th partner is Chris, and the 5 of us just started from scratch. We didn't know
Wow.
what we were doing with servers. There were a lot of things that we knew about how to build a website and how to write and how to give really thorough fantasy advice, but we had no idea how to run a business or employ people or even the legal stuff. And we took a few years, but we pulled it off.
Did you guys ever feel like, man, this might not work out? Is this gonna, are we gonna be done with Roto News, or was it just kind of like, what, let's go?
No, good question. Several times, to the point where, we're all 5 individuals. We all have, families. Back then, a few of the guys started having kids, so that many times there was a decision: am I supporting my family right? And it was always 4, tugging one back in. There was times where, there was one time where we needed a wire from a customer, because it was our, only, non-individual customer. It was our only business customer. If that wire didn't come in, that week, we probably didn't have enough money to keep the lights on. There were times where, there was one time where the customers didn't used to pay to use the website, and we were, bleeding money like crazy. So we had to make a decision. The site's going to charge now. We had to make this big pitch to our customers why we're going to be an exclusive, pay model site. And we had our fingers like this while we turned on the pay switch, and, all of our customers, thankfully, supported that move. So many times we were, had one foot in the grave and one on a banana peel, I guess you would say.
That's the story of how it got you to where you are now, and that journey of the ups and the downs and things like that. I think kind of what are make you stronger through those moments, and are now led you to this very successful company is really cool to see and hear that.
Thankfully, we were single, and we had energy, and we really didn't need money that much at the time. So we pulled it off because of a lot of things and a lot of good fortune. So yeah.
That's awesome.
What made them decide to go the route of breakdown and analysis for players when no one else was doing it?
Good question. There's been a lot of game sites that have started to run contests. You pay to play your daily fantasy, or you just you run season-long leagues, or you're the commissioner service, that have done very, very well over the years. And there's a lot of them out there, and they're innovative, and they're run by bright individuals. And that was just never our forte. Our tech skills are a little bit better versed in building a website that can handle customers and publishing lots and lots of content. And it just was something we were always good at. So we said, well, where the money was there, exactly where you said, it was in building games and contests, and all this money was going at the internet. We said, we're just going to sit back and be the publishers, and we've kind of been one of the few games in town in that regard for a long time. So yeah,
because a lot of other sites and everyone now kind of emulate what you guys do as far as breakdowns and analysis and all of that. How do you how do you guys kind of stay ahead of the curve and like, separate yourselves from everyone else?
I think just sheer size, because we're the one site that we can cover it all. There's a lot of very good sites out there. I wouldn't even, consider, trying to put them down just because analysis is very good, especially in football. The bigger the sport is, the better the analysis is you're going to get. But we've been doing it for so long. We know what it takes to, not make mistakes. We cover cricket. We cover soccer in 8 different forms from all other countries. So we're the one source when it comes to a business partner that needs something that is RotoWire can cover it all. We can supply news feeds and analysis in probably 25 different sports if we need to, and then the sheer bandwidth we have, if there's an NFL football weekend, we're going to have writers on it all weekend long. The timing is really good. The experience, do you want to get fantasy advice from someone who's been doing it for
us?
Right, for that just dabbles in it, or do you want the guys that have played in leagues for 20 years and they just know how to win, and they're not cocky or whatever about it, but you can tell when you listen to someone on the radio or whatever, if they're an experienced player who knows even simple-ish type leagues, what it takes to win, what you want to be doing, what you don't want to be doing. So
How was your fantasy cricket team this year? They been pretty good,
I haven't gone that far yet.
Okay.
People would
I have some friends in Australia. Maybe I'll let them know about RotoWire for their cricket teams.
It's all over the world, like U.S. football or hockey. There's places in the world where the fantasy principle applies. People love to play. You love to compete with your neighbors, your family. It's a great way to stay in touch with people. So other sports are way bigger all over the world, but fantasy fantasy cricket is huge over there. So you're seeing all these what has worked over here, and I would say U.S. is the first place where fantasy and daily fantasy really took off. But you see it all over the world now. People can't get enough, fantasy soccer.
With those sports that are like big overseas, soccer, cricket, rugby, and I don't know if you guys are doing rugby or not, but how do you have like a team of people over in other countries, or is it just you're kind of hearing from
both? It always takes managers to run it, so we need those folks here in the States, but again, we're so big and we've put ourselves together. We need writers in other countries. RotoWire is just not this group in Madison. We have writers in pretty much every city you can think of. We have writers all over the world. So when we say RotoWire is going to do cricket now, RotoWire is going to do Aussie rules football, we better have writers over there that know the sport, know how to speak intelligently about it. And once you have that foundation, we have all the people you would need, here who kind of built the company, who can clean up the content. Even someone might be a great cricket analyst and can put it on paper and all that, but they truly need to learn, okay, how do you write about this? How do you put it on the internet? So you put it all together. It's pretty good once it's done.
That's pretty cool. So RotoWire is known for giving fans real-time information. What all goes into staying in the know on sports news?
If you're part of our group on any level, I would say you go away for a week, you just feel lost. You feel so far behind that you missed anything. So between Twitter, anything these days, it's basically staying on top of your news feeds. Even me, I'm only dabbling for the company and what I used to do. I like to hold on to those journalism things, and I love the sports part of my job, and I'm an editor. I copy edit a lot, but even crusty old me, I have 2 channels on. I have a Twitter feed going. Anything in real time, you just got to be on top of it and be ready to apply it, pretty quickly.
Wow. Which sports news outlet was your first major partner?
That was another huge make or break moment, because we kind of limped along from 2001 to 2004 it was. So there was 3 years of dry, paychecks and stuff like that. And we were doing okay. Like I said, it was coming. There was enough support from our customers who have always been great by us that it was building into something. But there's also a game of, do I want to keep doing this till I'm 35 and try to have kids, as part of this and do that? So our first major one that came along, which really was a game changer for us, was ESPN.
Wow.
And what happened was, we had enough of a following, and we just knew the right person at ESPN that got over there, and they sized it up. They were in charge of how to improve ESPN's. They run great stuff over there. They can do whatever they need to do. But fantasy is a very minutia oriented thing. You need a lot of worker bees and stuff like that. And if you're a new manager at ESPN, do you really want to figure out a way to get hundreds of writers and go put all that together and start from scratch and not even know it? Or you can say, B, I know these guys. I know they're going to, get us a fair deal. Let's just go hire them. So very quickly we became, I keep saying this, but we became kind of like the Associated Press of fantasy sports. And if you're a major newspaper, do you want to send journalists all over the country all the time, or do you want to hire the folks that are already doing that and, pay them a fair fee? And we just said, tell us what you want to do. We've definitely, because of partners like ESPN or Yahoo or Fox, we've changed even or added a lot of things, what we do over the years, just to, things we didn't even know the fantasy audience would want, just to keep building more and more and more tools.
Were you guys also one of ESPN's first, like fantasy, analysis, companies as well? Like,
yeah, that's a good way to put it. We were definitely, there weren't a lot of companies back then that had a fantasy department. So when they kind of created theirs, sure, they have great. If you ever go on, TV and you see ESPN analysts, they're excellent. They just do things that we don't do. But for that nitty gritty, how do you supply news analysis? If you're on ESPN's website and someone gets hurt and you want to read what happened, when they might come back, that's all RotoWire. And, we've just been partners with them on those types of things. For many, many years. So
what year
really cool.
did you begin to partner with ESPN?
2004 was our first year with them, and it's stuff like that has worked great because, like I said, we have no pretension about being the ESPN of things, and they're great at mainstream sports, and they do their thing there. But like I said, when you can hire someone, whether you own a house or whatever, if I can hire someone to, do the electric or do the whatever, I'm going to do it because it works for me, and they know what they're doing in that regard. Yeah.
And with ESPN hiring you guys, it wasn't just you; it was your entire RotoWire. So now they have everyone working for them essentially with you guys.
Yeah, they just basically use the it was a certain portion of the content, but it was what they needed. But to really answer your question, no, they didn't. Most places were just starting to get there. Even you take Yahoo, or big companies like that. And the other real game changer, for not just us but the whole industry, and about a year after that, 2005, SiriusXM said, we're going to start, fantasy sports is big. Wow, people might want to hear about that. They like to listen and call in and ask questions about their team. So we were the first company to have a dedicated show on there, and we actually had to pitch it to them like, no, don't just have these little fantasy companies as guests. Do a real show. And we had to push for that and make our case, and now it's, to this day, there's probably 15 fantasy football and baseball shows on SiriusXM.
So cool.
So when you partnered with ESPN, was it kind of like they gave you kind of the guidelines of what they wanted, or were they like, go for it, you guys do your thing?
No, it was mostly player news and notes, and there's just a constant feed of player reporting that we do. If there's a baseball slate, if there's an NBA slate, there's a whole host of games, and out of that, there will come who had great performances. In the fantasy world, you want to know who's a under-the-radar player who just had a big game. Okay, why did that happen? What are you going to report on that? Let's get the news out there. Injuries are obviously huge, so it's a lot of nitty-gritty, and they needed a partner that could, put all that together, for them. So, yeah. And it's still what we do to this day for our own customers and, everybody else. It's a core piece of the business. Yeah.
So are you guys on set at all, like feeding, like do you guys feed them information, or is it just strictly at home stuff? Or
good question. Most things in the internet world are XML feeds, and all companies deal with everybody else. Everybody's got partners and fantasies, but most tend to work, you create an XML feed, for somebody. Even if I was a stats provider, which we're not, you would build your stats and send those XML feed, to a major, company. So a lot of major media companies again, they have the television, they have all of that, but you might see a lot of their, you'll see it on their scrolls or whatever stats provided by whoever. So there's a lot to put it, to put it all into, their whole fantasy world, which is huge. A lot of these media sites, like I said, a major part of their whole sports section would just be dedicated to fantasy or DFS.
Okay, so you guys are more of like the news updates. You're not like the ones who are like, LeBron James has scored. This is his 5th game wearing a purple headband and
right,
like,
right.
You guys aren't those guys.
We would provide the the news and in some cases analysis through those sites, which again our own customers get all that too. But it's just again it shows up in different forms. If I play on an ESPN league, and we all probably have in one of our football leagues or something like that, it shows up. And if I dig way down, okay, my guy got hurt, I got to go find out more. But eventually you'll get to RotoWire, and we're doing the nitty gritty. Whereas on our own website for our own customers, like I was saying earlier, we do it all. We'll just run column after column of what you should be doing. Here's your cheat sheet just for week 7. You got a question? Go ahead, type it in, and we'll answer it for you. So it gets when you have your own site, you can do whatever we want to do. We can even try new things and do it that way too.
Did see going back to like your when you guys first started, you guys offered this for free, and then you went to paid format. Like what kind of happened?
Yeah, it was a bold move at the time because we did that in 2001, and we did it out of necessity. It wasn't some great vision. It was like, this is going to either keep the lights on or it's not. And back then, everybody thought the answer was traffic. It was all, we're going to make money having an internet site. We're going to build traffic, and we're going to do whatever it takes to do that. And it just did not work for a whole host of companies. It was part of the dot-com bust in the early 2000s. So I wouldn't say we were the first, but we were certainly the first fantasy sports company to say we have to charge for this. We're putting too much into it, and there's too many resources involved for it. It has a value to people, and we truly did not know. We thought we had to make a switch. We basically had to say, today is free. Tomorrow you're gonna have the same content. We're gonna try to do more. We're gonna stand by you guys, but it has to be a pay model. And we had very low expectations for that, but it was basically we had to hit a home run and not a single at the time. And to this day, we'll remember those. There was a 1-week period where we had to follow, and if a certain number of customers didn't follow us, down that path, we were dead to rights, and far exceeded our expectations. And we're thankful to this day that happened. We're very loyal to our customer base because they were loyal to us. But that was a magic moment where we had a little bell in the office, and it sounded off whenever there was a paying customer. And we turned it on, and we were like cavemen around the fire because
getting excited.
It was there was a lot of sweat.
Was it like a ding bell, or was it like the hockey siren?
It was a ding because I can still remember, and it was like,
forgot
whoa.
to turn the volume on.
But we were so slow. We had so few customers back then. I remember we would play. We had so little to do. We had so few customers to please other than just keeping the website up, which was a lot easier back then, that we would sit there in the office and we'd play foosball. At morning work would get done, we'd have foosball tournaments in the afternoon, and we'd play. And that was all we had to do until we'd go home. And our tech guy, Herb, put the ding on. And that was we're not going to be playing foosball at all anymore because we're going to be kicked out of this office in a couple weeks. But that ding kept going, and I still remember to this day. That's pretty frequent. Like, that ding's going off pretty good. And we just, it was a very exciting month of action. And we kind of knew then between that and a couple years later, getting some media deals that we were actually going to be in this for the long haul. So it was exciting times.
Yeah, I was going to ask, when you guys switched models, did you guys see a dip in your numbers, like, or how big of a dip, or it was just like people stuck with it?
Oh, a big dip, because we got called, anything you wanted to by those who didn't want to pay. In 2001, do you know how rare it was to pay for something on the internet? You know what I mean? It just wasn't the model back then. So we got called some very choice words, and we had a lot of people say, so long or whatever. That probably circled back a few years later because the industry definitely, changed over time, and people are very used to, whether you have an Apple phone and you want to pay for a draft kit, or anything these days. You pay for your
Yeah.
commissioner services. These days you pay ESPN to run, you pay CBS, you pay whoever to run, your league. You used to that was all free a long time ago, but yeah, we were one of the first to take that leap of faith.
Yeah, that leap of faith also was, if you guys were going to go down, you were going to go down swinging. You were going to give it all. One final push. Like if this is, it's going to make or break us. And like from what you were saying, it definitely took a dip, but at the same time, it projected you guys to, be something big with all, what was to come after that.
No, it's a great way to put it, because it was when you have a customer base that pays, it stays with you. You know what I mean? They're going to pay you every year. It's recurring business. It's not getting some, traffic ad that's just going to go away and be a one-time thing. But the best way to put it is, we didn't have a lot to bet on. We were running out of money.
Right.
We were some of us were looking for other jobs and what we were going to do, but we all loved what we did, and we had almost nothing to bet on. But the one thing we could bet on was our customers. We just knew they were like us. It was basically, thousands of people like us, and we knew it was a very honest plea. It was a pitch we made, and we said, we have to do this. We hope you support us. We would understand if you don't, but this is what we have to do. And they did. But that was the bet. We bet on our customers, and it worked.
Do you remember what the fee was when you first started to?
Yep, it was $59.99 for the year.
Okay.
So it was a very big. That was a big deal for us. If you multiplied it by
Yeah.
enough, it was enough to keep the rent paid and to do all that. And believe, so that was 20 years ago, and there are still customers, and we at some point get them a T-shirt or a sweatshirt because they've been in so long. Not only that, it would take 20 years of loyalty to do that, but not only that, who keeps their credit card for 20 years?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It actually has to churn over without. So, kudos to them
That's really cool.
for pulling that off. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys should do a 20-year special or something.
Yeah.
For those,
We
for that
have.
original.
We try to be thankful and respectful, but yeah, there's a core group that's still in there, and at some point it's going to be like, how many people have gone to every single Super Bowl? It's probably like 12 at this point. At some point there will be a dozen RotoWire original subscribers left, so we'll invite them for a fantasy draft or something. So
Oh yeah,
neat.
get in some pizza and wings or something.
Right.
So as we enter this last segment of the episode, we're going to talk about the science of fantasy football. But we're gonna cut to Ryan here, because if you haven't, you've probably been wondering why does he keep going off camera and wiping his nose. There's been a really big fire here down in Orange County, and so there's ash and soot just blowing all over the place. So I
have extremely bad
He's got bad allergies right now, so he doesn't have a cold or anything, and
don't get nervous.
He's just been staring over here, glossy-eyed, because of his allergies.
Tim's just
So
been
that's-
saying some pretty
I
emotional
thought it
things.
was because of Tim's interview for sure.
It's disappointing. Not 'cause I do feel bad because we've all been through that nasty smoke-filled allergy season. But I thought my story had really hit home, and either you're tearing up because of that, or because your fantasy football or basketball team had gone so haywire, it was really starting to get to you.
It's from all different angles. It's coming in from all different
A
angles.
lot of emotions and natural things that are happening. Yes.
But we are going to transition into the next segment, and we're going to talk about the science of fantasy football. Since we have the fantasy football guru here,
the expert.
we're going to try to answer some questions. So,
Alrighty. So Tim, what position would you recommend picking up first in fantasy football?
So a little while ago we kind of ruled out quarterback just because there's reasons behind it. Again, a lot of times when you think of fantasy, you have to say what translates to the league I'm in or the folks I'm playing against. So we've kind of ruled out quarterback, even though it's probably the most exciting position right now. But you'd get a long debate about this for a whole nother podcast, whether you'd go running back or a wide receiver. So you're certainly not going to take a fringe like a kicker or a defense, or even you just wouldn't start your team with Kelsey or a Kittle at tight end. So you're really saying running back or wide receiver, which way do you go? And my thinking, even to this day, even though the industry's kind of changed, where it's gone, a lot of people will take receivers very early, like a Michael Thomas went very early. I'm still old school enough and know that you have a hard time winning a season without that stud running back. Again, it would have been Saquon earlier this year, Christian McCaffrey, Kamara. It's very hard to win a league. It used to be Gurley, before he got a little older, but it's very hard to win a league without that guy leading your team as a running back. There's so few of them. There's probably 12 guys in the league who not only are they that great and that special, but they're also, it's not a shared situation where, oh, we have 3 running backs running the ball. There's really 12 or 13 players in the NFL who are called the bell cow back, and you pretty much have to have one of those on your team. So I'm still leaning that as the position you want to start your team with.
Yeah, gotta get those running backs in.
Yeah.
What is the secret to preparing for a fantasy draft, if there is one, in your opinion?
Well, the secret is not listening all the time to guys like me and listening to the true experts at RotoWire. But I would say the one of the best tips I have, because there's so many knowns these days about what you know, what you can read, what you can digest, is really the common error in a fantasy draft is people just don't concentrate enough. They'll show up for a draft and it's a big party to them, or they're online at home and they're just doing 5 other things. So a major bit of advice is, look, these next 2 hours are going to, like we've talked about, they're going to affect the next 17 weeks of your life, and you're going to either have a good week or a miserable week based on what you do during these next two hours. So free up yourself, get a room in your house. Don't do anything else. Shut off your phone. Just have your internet, your computer on, or your laptop, or whatever you're drafting with, and do it that way. Trust me, you'll have such a better team if you just filter out all the noise and don't try to, do it. Same thing if you go to an in-person draft, which fell off a little bit this year because of, the environment we're in. But if you go to those, be ready. Like I said, you can celebrate and talk trash with your buddies a lot of other times, but be ready when it's your turn. Have a plan. Don't just spitball it and say, oh, well, I didn't get the second pick. I didn't get Kamara. Well, we'll see what happens. Have a plan. If you should know you're picking 10th, and all right, I'm going to kind of build my team, X, Y, or Z. That's a huge way to play in a fantasy league. Just being ready from day. Your draft is probably 60 to 70% of the battle right there. So do it like you're taking a test, to be honest.
I feel like you were talking directly to me just now, because that's exactly what happened for me this year and past drafts. I don't remember. I was watching a TV show while I was doing my draft, and then I was like, "Oh, it's my turn. I'm going to pick Zeke Elliott because he's good, but missing out on all of the other."
You gotta be
players.
Focused and detailed, T.
See, my problem isn't like the 2 hours of drafting. It's like 6 weeks into the season, and I forget to look at my roster until who's playing, who has a bye week, because then I'll have a guy who's on my starting lineup it's a bye week, and I just lost out on all those points from somebody on the bench, and then I get frustrated and I'm like, okay, forget it, I lost. I'm not gonna.
Why did I score
Exactly.
70 points this week?
So that's my frustration. But
that's the second major piece of advice is if you're in a league, just know what time. It may only take 15 minutes a week. Do whatever you want to on Sunday while the games are happening. You can watch nothing and figure out later on that night what happened, but know on Tuesday you better figure out who's hurt, who the key running backs are that just came out of nowhere, who are now going to be the number 1 running back on their team. And when you get to whatever day of the week your league does it, who you're going to do, and never have that. Just know when I wake up on Sunday, before I brush my teeth, I got to set that line up, and then I can adjust it. Then I can tweak it, but at least have a default system, at all times.
Yeah.
What are some helpful drafting strategies?
For football, I would say those 2 things. Keep focused, keep concentrated. But there's little tips you can do. One being, like we discussed, have a plan with the quarterback. Say, I'm not going to be the guy who takes Lamar. I know he's going to be gone first. I know Mahomes is going to be gone. So, okay, I'm going to build my team around the second-tier quarterbacks. Or I know, very good. Chris Liss is one of them. Very good players who say, I'm going to take the last possible. If I'm in a 14-team league, I'm going to take the 14th best quarterback that's going to be my guy, and I'm going to go running back, receiver, all the way to then. I know guys who they know they're on the turn. They know in a 14-team league they're sitting 14th, and they have a plan in place. I'm going to go receiver, build my team like that. So that have some kind of idea of how you want to do, because most of us know, where we're going to pick. We know who's in our league. We know what our friends like to do. If I'm in a league with a bunch of Packers fans, am I going to overpay on Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers, not in that league. No, you're just wasting your time, and you're probably not going to win. The other one too is kind of how it's just sort of a little personal tip, but a lot of people always make these rules. Take a kicker last, do that. Well, I take a kicker second last because I'm going to get a top 5 kicker. It probably matters at some point. If I get Justin Tucker because I took him in the 3rd last round, year after year, that guy's a great kicker. Okay, It's a kicker. It's never going to get me the points, Mahomes or whatever, but I'd rather have that kicker and take some random wide receiver that is my personal sleep. No one's going to pick him anyway, and I'll pick that person in the last round. So I just kind of do little things like that. I make a receiver always my last pick. I always make sure to pick a kicker in a defense 1 round ahead, so at least I do it that way.
Yeah.
Get a little bit of a decent. Those extra points are going to make a big difference. It could make a big difference if you're in the top tier, the 1, 2, or 3 team in the league. Like you said, if you have a top tier kicker, at the end of the week, those 2 or 3 points could equal out to you taking that week.
There are people would argue against it. There are only a few, but again, each year you kind of know, okay, whatever, this team's going to have the Ravens are going to have a good defense every year. I'm going to take them just a little bit earlier. So I always you're never going to have this great team like 20 years ago where no one knew who was who except for the quarterbacks and a few running backs. Everybody knows a little bit of something. So I always say I'm only going to have 1 or 2 good running backs, 1 or 2 wide receivers. I want at least a really good player at all the other fringe positions, and then you have at least a team at least you want to, you know what I mean, enjoy the team you put together.
So a more well-balanced team for you, more so than a stacked, running backs or just receivers.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm in a lot of leagues where you don't actually draft. They're called salary cap leagues where you only have a certain amount of money to play in, and I always build the if I had $200 to spend, I have a lot of $20 guys, as opposed to, I'm not going to try to hit that home run and have Saquon and then he gets hurt because look what happens on your whole team. Then you only used $110 on all the other players you needed, and they're not very good. So
yeah. Do you find yourself in the same boat as me, falling in love with players from the team you're a fan of, and drafting them maybe a little too early,
rose-colored? I do. You're always optimistic about everyone that says how are the Bills going to do this year. They're a 10-6 team, no doubt about it. And there's been many of 4 and 12 years after that was uttered, but you're always optimistic. And I'll say that's kind of a bad move to get I got all Packers or I got all Vikings on this team. That's kind of a bad move. But on the good side, we're not playing for millions of dollars. You're playing against your friends. Right. We're going to enjoy this for the next 17 weeks. So at least don't go overboard. But I always make sure, for you, the Broncos, for me, the Bills, I always make sure I have at least 1 or 2 because you want to root for the team. If you're going to invest 17 Sundays and Mondays into this, you want to have guys you root for. I like to have guys I enjoy watching. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to sit there for 3 hours and watch Monday Night Football, I want to at least root for the likable guys. I want to be smart about, this guy's a great player. He works hard. I built my team around those guys, and we all know. You know more about the Broncos than I know. I know more about the Bills than you know. So you think you get a little bit of edge there too. So it's good to balance it. Is the long
for sure.
I definitely was in the overboard. But I have Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant, Drew Hawk, the Broncos defense, and Phillip Lindsay. So
their bye week. You're struggling.
Yeah, you want to play T on the bye week.
I was on the waiver wire.
Better start picking up players.
That whole bye week.
That's funny.
Oh man.
What should go into deciding which players to start or sit?
That's a good question because there's many theories about how to do that. There's many ways to play it. You can just say I'm going to take the best matchups and play it out like that, and do it, make it a strictly based what I think is an upside game. But I always say my personal advice, and a lot of the editorial side of RotoWire would speak the same way, is don't overthink it. When you're sitting there like this guy is the third receiver on the Chargers, but look at that matchup, but he's the third receiver on the Chargers, and I have I have a healthy Michael Thomas, and he plays a really tough matchup. He's got to play the Ravens this week. I got to overthink that. Don't do it. You always want to go to bat with your best players. Things don't always play out. The Jets are terrible, and they can have good games. You do not want to overthink and end up starting guys who you've reached on just because you're trying to outsmart everybody. You have to kind of stick to your gut about these players. And there's the best way to have a great fantasy season is to just have, this is my core. Unless a guy's hurt, I'm going in every week with this lineup. And unless there's just some obscene, matchup thing to lead to your, how do you view matchups? I use it as a tiebreaker, and that's it. It's a tiebreaker for me. If I have Jerry Jeudy and, someone on the Bills who are very even, that's when I start looking at the matchup. And other than that, always take the best player. Even if it doesn't work, at least you can feel good about you didn't make yourself look stupid by overthinking it.
Yeah. Are you do you, when it comes to like starting or sitting or playing different guys, are you more into getting guys off the waiver wire or trading, like when your team's like starting to?
I like the waiver wire just because trades take a lot of time that I don't have, and I always.
Because you have 5 different teams.
Too many different teams, too many different personal obligations.
Yep.
And it just takes time. And you end up making enemies like that because you feel you let them down if you don't complete the trade. And I've also been in enough leagues where if you win the league, you want it to be because you were smart. You don't want it to be because you took advantage of somebody else and they say, oh, you traded for Todd Gurley, and you won the league because you took advantage of a Deshaun Watson, and he later got injured. You want to?
Wow, you're bringing that up right
now. you want to, like, the guy who works the waiver wire and does a really good job with that. They get held in highest regard. How did you even know? This running back was a good call before it even happened. If you can become kind of that guy who gets ahead of things and a person who works the waiver wire really well probably doesn't need to make a lot of trades. And you would tend to see a lot of my partners are in industry leagues. You'll see leagues where trading isn't even allowed just because it can be considered. You can collaborate too much with person. Yeah. When there's money at hand,
text them on the side, like, hey, yo, give me him, and I'll give you,
And even not in shady fashion, you just don't want to. You don't want to have a lot of money change hands just because someone did some trade and put one over on somebody else.
Yeah. Do you prefer fantasy seasons or daily fantasy?
For me, seasons. I mean, I grew up playing those. I probably played them at a very young age, but even. With the younger folks, and I just feel it brings out more camaraderie. I'm still all about doing the draft with your family, doing the draft with your buddies who you went to high school with. Watching that play out over 17. We have prizes for if you come in last place, you owe double the amount of money, or you owe double the bill at the restaurant, and all that is makes it fun. Even if I have a terrible team, you're always playing for something. Dailies, it's over in a day, and you might have got lucky on something or whatever. But more of a season long type of guy.
So, what is your opinion on leagues having trade vetoes?
On trade vetoes, I would say in the leagues. Maybe this is advice, maybe it's bad advice, but in the goal for your league, if you start a league with a bunch of your friends and you're in it for the long haul, the goal of your league is to have a league where you don't need to have vetoes. You want to be in a league where I know if Ryan trades with T and there's a trade that goes down that it may go terrible for those guys, but it's fair on the level. It was thought out. It's like, oh, this guy needed this guy needed. Anyone could look at side A and side B and actually have a hard time picking which is fair. So the goal of your league is not to have the guys who take advantage of the dead fish owners and is like, you know what, that guy doesn't even care. I'm going to go trade with them and poach him. It just gets looked up. You almost rather would not win a league and be looked at that way than winning a league where you earned it. So I'm kind of in favor of it in new leagues where you need to weed that out. But your goal should be at some point to not have to veto. You don't want owners in your leagues that where you're vetoing trades or because they're either too dumb because they're not following and they're just mailing it in. You know what I mean? Every week on their lineups. Or on the other side, you don't want the guys in your leagues who are all they're doing is just poaching other owners, and it's like is that really fair? Is that why we're doing this?
Yeah, makes sense.
I'm with you on that one for sure.
Which has changed the fantasy football game more, the mobile quarterback or the dual threat running back?
The mobile quarterback or the dual threat running back who can catch and, run like the wind or whatever. Both definitely have. Obviously, pass catching running backs in the last, decade have become a huge thing, and it's almost like you can't be a top fantasy back unless you at least catch, some passes. But I would still say this is like I guess it started with Vic a little bit, and then with Newton earlier in the decade with Cam. But I would say that Kaepernick, that's changed everything.
Yeah.
To have, again, we're saying we're not going to pick this player, number one, but that changes when you have a Lamar Jackson who can throw for 120 yards and still score 35 points. They're always in the game on one play. A quarterback can get 12 points instead of 4 points now. So I would say that's the biggest game changer. And almost now, if you have a Roethlisberger they're pushed so far down just because they don't run, and it's how many points do they got to make up in the passing game? Whereas a Herbert, even who's a rookie, or Newton did it with the Panthers, but you have Lamar, Mahomes can run a little bit. You have guys like that who can just.
Kyler Murray.
Your guy, Josh
Kyler
Allen.
Murray is crazy.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson can run for
Josh
70
Allen
yards. Josh Allen.
run too.
These are guys with they can get 7 extra points in maybe one every 2, 3, 4 games. Are probably going to put one in the end zone because they're so big and strong.
Yeah.
Add those 12 points to a normal passing line. That's a game changer right there.
And that's what made you go against your rule of not picking a quarterback early, right? You picked up Lamar too early.
Well, you can be sneaky about it. If you find a Russell Wilson, again, I say most of the leagues towards the top this year have a Russell Wilson. They punted on the top 3 guys, but you find that running guy. People called it early, maybe someone like myself, but Herbert can run. Josh Allen can run. There's guys that can. You don't think Kyler Murray. People knew he was a great quarterback, but once you realize just how fast he is, and you translate that to fantasy, and you're saying, whoa! Every time this guy gets flushed out of the pocket, runs for 10 yards, can rip off 50, 60 yards a game on running, and maybe put one in like a Roethlisberger or someone like that. They're going to score once or twice a year, but these other guys are scoring 7, 8 times. That's a big difference once you add it all up. So back to your question, if you can find the guy, Lamar last year was not drafted or was, a last 3 rounds pick. Imagine if you put that through your head and say, you know what, I didn't get Mahomes, I didn't get Aaron Rodgers, Brady used to be way at the top. I didn't get those guys, but this guy can run, and if he just throws a little bit, that's a huge advantage point to your league right there. Running backs, great position, get a ton of points, but a lot of knowns play out there. Kamara is going to have a great year or get hurt, but again, if you can kind of nitpick the quarterback spot, get a Russell. Oh, Russell's going to have a big year. Look at all these receivers he's got. Wow, add on 60 yards of rushing and some touchdowns. It's a big number every week.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up the show, we like to give our guests a chance to plug what they got going on, what they're involved with, and so tell the people who are watching or listening at home where they can find you and a little bit more about how they can get involved with the RotoWire.
Yep, like I said, we have a subscription website. We think it's well worth it. So if you go to rotowire.com. We'll even let you try it. Like I said, it may not be for everybody, but anyone who's at least fairly serious about doing well, and not just their football league, but like I said, basketball, hockey, baseball, pretty much any sport. You can go to our website, rotowire.com, write support at rotowire.com. Just ask for a trial. No credit card, no anything. We stand by what we do. We'll let you try it out, and we'll gladly, we think you'll be a firm believer, so we're happy to let you try it out. Yeah.
That's awesome. Tim, we appreciate you coming on the show, sharing some of your wisdom, your knowledge with us. Hopefully we won't be making those same mistakes in the future. And thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it, man.
I had fun. Thanks for having me.
That was a blast. Well, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Water Break. We'll catch you on the next one.